we choose as individuals to live as if I am a citizen, a denizen of the Satya Yuga. I will be a golden age individual, even in the midst of this darkness. And in this way, indeed, we will be the lights of this world. We will be the models. We will be the anti-politicians. Just like the Srimad Bhagavatam was describing how with these corrupt politicians, what happens? The people follow them and they become corrupt. We are going to be the opposite of this. We are going to be indeed the lights of this world. We are going to be the models. We are going to be the leaders, such that when people see us, they have hope. They say to themselves, even unbeknownst to themselves, even not necessarily even understanding these concepts, still they will understand what I am seeing are individuals who are not of this age. They are not of this place. They are in this world, but they are not of this world. And in this way, with ourselves, living as citizens, as denizens of the Satya Yuga, the Golden Age, we will bring light to this dark age. And we will restore the Satya Yuga for 10,000 years. Sanatana Dharma Jayate. You will often hear me say that, often at the end of a talk, sometimes at the beginning. And of course, as we know, what this Sanskrit term means is victory to Sanatana Dharma, Jayate, meaning victory, meaning to vanquish, to conquer, etc. And that essentially is what my talk is going to be about. But more, we're going to be talking about Sanatana Dharma and how to fully practice Sanatana Dharma in our current age. Our current age, as everyone here knows, is called the Kali Yuga. And it's a very interesting thing. I have found it over the last several decades a very interesting phenomenon that this term, Kali Yuga, is actually a term that is now very widespread and is used in several different circles, several different intellectual circles, political circles, spiritual circles throughout the world, that some of which are Vedic and some of which are a little bit extraneous to the actual Vedic tradition. So there are many people now who use this term, Kali Yuga. In some cases, they have a very good inkling of what this term means. In some cases, very good, actually. They have a very, very good idea of what this term actually means. In some cases, not so much so. It's kind of mixed with other notions that come from a little bit of speculation, other traditions, etc. But at the same time, it is indeed a very interesting fact that this term Kali Yuga is used by so many people today with this, again, traditional understanding of what the term means. What is meant by the Kali Yuga? These two words certainly are Sanskrit. What the Kali Yuga is the age of darkness, the age of conflict. There are many different translations for how you can translate this exact term, Kali Yuga. But what is interesting is that this is not only a Sanskritic term, it's not only a Vedic concept, it is an ancient concept that is found among all ancient Dharmic peoples. It's not just, as our previous presenter was just saying, it's not just quote-unquote Indian. In fact, for that matter, it's not even just Vedic. All Dharmic peoples of the past recognize the fact that historically we have been going through a succession of ages leading in a downward progression, a devolution of humanity, a devolution of culture, of morals, of even the expression of spirituality, etc. This is something that the ancient Greeks recognized, that the Romans recognized. All the ancient pre-Christian European peoples, the Celts recognized this. The Nordics recognize this, etc. This is something that we find in ancient China, ancient Japan. Again, I can go on and on with a tremendous list of ancient cultures where they had this very same concept. Interestingly, the very opposite of the concept historically of modernity. That is, the modern concept is one of progression, of evolution, where the idea is that with each succeeding generation that goes by, miraculously, everything's getting better. You see, if you listen to the ideas of modernity, that the further back you go, the more savage people were, the more ignorant people were. And of course, we are supposed to be progressing to the point where, at this point, everyone should be a sage. Everyone should be a saint. If you listen to, again, the idea of evolution and progressive evolution of modernity. Of course, for those of us who are alive today, what to speak of, again, the ancients, even for those of us who are alive today, with our own eyes, we can see that this idea of a progressive, evolutionary sort of trajectory of human culture, we can see that this is nonsense. We can see that this is certainly not the case. If anything, for those of us who are old enough, we have seen that even in our own lifetime, things have gotten worse. Culture has become more coarse. People have become more coarse. They have become more impatient. They have become just degraded in so many different ways. Well, this sadly is the idea of the Kali Yuga that was held, again, by all the ancients, certainly by the Vedic people, but really all the ancients. And that is that, sadly, we are now living for the past roughly 5,100 years in the darkest of ages. We are living in an age that has tremendous challenges for individuals who wish to live a spiritual lifestyle, who wish to be moral, who wish to be good, etc. So this is the age that we're living in. The current year, right now, 2020, is actually the year 5122 of the Kali Yuga. 5122. We know that for a fact. In fact, we know literally the exact date and time that the Kali Yuga started. What we follow is what is called the Yugabda calendar. Vedic people follow what is called the Yugabda calendar. That is the calendar of the Yuga. So thus, this is the year 5122 of the Kali Yuga. So we have been in this Yuga for quite some time. From the very first days of the Kali Yuga until this very moment, and a little bit beyond this moment, there has been an exponential descent into spiritual disintegration, as we spoke about previously with my previous talk, moral degeneracy, and cultural ruin. Now, to give people a little bit of an idea of the dark age in which we're living, I want to read several verses from Srimad Bhagavatam that talk in very vivid detail about what it is that we are experiencing today in the Kali Yuga. So let me read these verses. The first one is from Canto 12, Chapter 2, Verse 1. And this gives a nice little foundational understanding of what many of the problems are that we're facing today. Dharma, truthfulness, cleanliness, tolerance, mercy, duration of life, physical strength and memory will all diminish day by day because of the powerful influence of the age of Kali. Now, these are all things which, again, as I said just a short time ago, we have witnessed ourselves. We have seen that all of these positive qualities that human beings once extolled, that human beings once celebrated, are diminishing more and more, not just over millennia, not just over centuries, even in our very lifetime. We have seen this. Let me go on to another verse from Srimad Bhagavatam. This is Canto 12, Chapter 2, Verse 7. As the earth thus becomes crowded with a corrupt population, whoever among either the Brahmanas, Kshatriyas, Vaishyas, or Shudras shows himself to be the strongest, that person will gain political power. Thus, interestingly, what this verse is talking about is how, again, even the divisions of classes, the divisions of human nature, are not respected anymore. And whoever can show themselves to be brutal, whoever can show themselves to be strong, not in the positive sense, but meaning that, again, they are brutal individuals. Those are the people who will gain power. And we have seen this again and again in the span of the Kali Yuga. We have seen tyranny after tyranny after tyranny. Finally, in the 20th century, the 20th century was the century of ideology. That's what I call it. It was the century of ideology, where all throughout the 20th century, what did we see? Totalitarian ideologies in the form of communism, in the form of Maoism, etc., where we had these brutal, strong but brutal individuals who annihilated large segments of the population. And here Srimad Bhagavatam is itself talking about this. Another verse. This is from Canto 12, Chapter 1, verse 41. The citizens, governed by these low-class kings or rulers, will imitate the character, behavior, and speech of their rulers. Harassed by their leaders and by each other, they will all suffer ruination. So, interestingly, what is this verse actually saying? It is showing the absolute opposite of how leadership should be operative in the world. What is a true leader? It's an individual who leads by their good example. It is a person who has character. It's a person who is truly strong. They don't have to be dictatorial. Rather, they are strong in who they are. And they are following Dharma. And as a result, the people, seeing that person as a perfect example, they follow that person. Well, in the Kali Yuga, we have the opposite. We have degraded individuals who are our rulers. We have corrupt politicians. We have people who really, in a realm of sanity, should never even be close to power, and yet they are ruling as presidents, prime ministers, even kings, etc. And what do the people do? The people, being the people, they follow the leader. And thus, the leader being corrupt, the people also become corrupt. And as this verse says, to their ruination. Thus we have seen this. Again, not to sound like a broken record, but I have no choice. We are lacking leaders. In every field of human endeavor, we are lacking true leaders in religion. And again, I am a religious leader. But my God, we are lacking true leaders in religion. We have corrupt individuals in every denomination on earth. We are lacking true leaders in politics, in culture, in every field that we can think of, in science. And the people, in a way, almost have no choice because they are innocent. They will follow that bad example, and thus all will be ruined. Just one more verse from Srimad Bhagavatam. This is Canto 12, Chapter 3, verse 32. Cities will be dominated by thieves. The Vedas will be contaminated by speculative interpretations by atheists. Political leaders will virtually consume the citizens. And the so-called priests and intellectuals will be devotees of their bellies and genitals. It's almost funny to hear this. It's almost humorous on the one hand. On the other hand, it's tragic because it's true. We recognize that this is indeed the case. Again, what I was just saying a moment ago. What is this verse saying? Our so-called leaders in every field, sadly, are corrupt. Whether it's religion, whether it's politics, whether it's any of these sectors. Cities will be dominated by thieves. Is that not indeed the case today? You know, I've had this conversation with several people about how when I was younger, when I was a child, my father, who had his formative years in New York City in the late 1930s, 40s, 50s, etc., and he would tell me stories of how safe things were in New York City. In New York City. He was born and raised in Brooklyn. Today, there are large sections of Brooklyn where you cannot even go during the daytime without fear. And when he was a child, it was safe in all 5 boroughs. And you could raise a family, and you could have children, and you could do things at night without fear that there would be thieves around every corner who were going to accost you. So sadly, this is what we have today in America and increasingly throughout the world. Indeed, we have cities that are filled with thieves, filled with criminals, where we have to be fearful all the time. And that's a horrible position for citizens to be in. That's a horrible position for innocent people to be in. To be fearful all the time, worrying all the time, having that anxiety within us, that stress of worrying, what is going to happen to me, having that uncertainty, when all you're trying to do, all that our people are trying to do is just live their lives in peace, in happiness, in a little bit of joy. but that's deprived from them, that's taken away from them, again, by these corrupt individuals. We find ourselves at this very important juncture of the Kali Yuga. Again, 2020 is where we are now, August of 2020. And the question is, what are we to do? As individuals who are spiritual people, who are Vedic people, who are Dharmic, who have a very good inkling. Everyone here in this room has an extremely good inkling of what is happening in the world, the negative things that, very sadly, I had to speak about in the Srimad Bhagavatam. We're aware of all this. We're also aware that there is a higher reality, that things do not need to be this way. We can look to the past, we can read the epic literature, we can read so much about true history that was there and realize that there was a time where there were so many civilizations where people did indeed live in peace. Not always perfect. There have always been wars. There have been famines. There have been these larger problems. But overall, in the past, we did indeed have societies that worked. And we know this. And the question is, what are we to do? How are we, as individuals, to conduct ourselves in the Kali Yuga? How do we transcend these deleterious effects of the Kali Yuga in such a way that we can maximize who we are as Vedic people, as individuals who want to live a true, pure, good, and valuable and meaningful life? What are we to do? There was a rather well-known thinker who lived in the 20th century, all throughout the 20th century. He was Italian, which makes me very happy, being an Italian. His name was Julius Evola. And he had a very interesting statement, because he too wrote about the conditions of the Kali Yuga and about modernity from a traditional spiritual perspective. And he had one very famous formula that he would say to people, and that is, in the Kali Yuga, with the craziness that's happening, with the degeneracy, with all of these problems that we see around us, his prescription was a very simple one. He would use the analogy of the Kali Yuga being like a tiger, a wild, crazy, energetic, dangerous tiger. And who are we as spiritual people? We're riding that tiger. We're stuck. We're on top of that tiger. We're riding the tiger. It's a crazy ride. We don't like it. But his prescription was ride the tiger. Ride the tiger, because you have no choice. Because if you get off the tiger, what will happen? The tiger will kill you. This is what Julius Evola said. And truthfully, even though I have a tremendous amount of respect for Julius Evola, I disagree with this. And more, while indeed it may have been the case at a certain point in history for the last maybe several decades, that was indeed good advice. If we find ourselves as individuals who are, to quote him, spiritual aristocrats, individuals who we understand what's happening in society, we wish to live a life of spiritual dignity, but yet we find ourselves in the cesspool of the Kali Yuga, what indeed are we to do? But simply step back, not be involved in anything external, like politics, trying to change the culture, etc., and just survive. Again, at one point this may have made sense, but in 2020, to me, it doesn't anymore. I don't believe that it's time to ride the tiger anymore. Indeed, I know for a fact that now is the time instead to vanquish the tiger, to quite literally vanquish this tiger, to defeat the tiger. And the tiger, at this point of the Kali Yuga, it can be vanquished. Why? The tiger's finally exhausted. That's one reason. It's the tiger itself. That is, these demonic forces who have been propelling the Kali Yuga in its trajectory, they are exhausted. That's the first thing from the perspective of the tiger. From our perspective, however, there is a even deeper reason why it is now time to indeed not just ride the tiger, but defeat it. And this is the reason. It is time to realize that the tiger was always made out of paper to begin with. The tiger itself was always actually made out of paper. Thus is the nature of illusion. The nature of illusion is such that you can be convinced that there is a ferocious demonic phenomenon that is there before you, that is insurmountable, that is undefeatable. But in actuality, that is our Maya, that is our illusion. We don't understand that with God on our side and ourselves as humble servants of God, nothing can defeat us. Not even the seemingly most ferocious tiger on earth. The truth of the matter is, we can indeed defeat evil in the world today. And not only can we, but we are destined indeed to defeat that evil. And we will defeat that evil. We cannot stop the Kali Yuga itself because this is a part of nature. Indeed, we know that Vedic civilization, and indeed, like I said, all the ancient civilizations, taught this historical concept, the concept that history proceeds through cycles, that we start with a golden age, and then it descends from there until finally there's the darkest of ages, what now is called the Kali Yuga. And when the Kali Yuga is truly over, once and for all, what happens then? There is another golden age, and the cycle repeats itself. So we know that the cycle itself is a part of nature, so we can't really stop the Kali Yuga. We cannot stop it entirely. But what can we do? We can transcend the time element itself, spiritually. In other words, we can't stop the Kali Yuga itself, but we as spiritual individuals do indeed have the ability to transcend the very cycle itself. Why is this the case? Because ultimately, we're not a part of the cycle. Ultimately, we are not a part of this material world. Ultimately, we need to realize who we truly are. We have lost our identity spiritually. Who are we? What are we? We are Atman. We are spirit. We are consciousness. Thus, we transcend time itself. So to transcend the cycle is easy. To transcend the cycle actually is easy. We are to be men and women against time. Against time. The truly spiritual individual, the yogi, has the ability to bend time to his or her will. To bend time. Time itself is an absolute reality. Time itself is eternal. However, how time is perceived is something that, according to Vedic spirituality, is something that is indeed relative. This is why, for a mosquito, they'll live for 72 hours, but for them, they lived 100 years. And then you have the gods, who will live for 1,000,000 years, but for them, it was about 75. So, time is something which, when you transcend the material element altogether, when we transcend materiality, we have the ability to do amazing things with time. So we cannot stop time. We cannot stop the natural cycle, but we can transcend it. And that being the case, we can indeed do something wondrous. Within the context of the Kali Yuga, we can and we will bring about a mini golden age. How do we do this? How do we indeed transcend time? How do we make the very fact that we are living in the Kali Yuga irrelevant? We live as denizens of the Satya Yuga. We live as denizens of the Golden Age now. We don't accept the Kali Yuga. We simply do not accept what is happening today. All these things that I've read about in the Srimad Bhagavatam and so much more, there's so much more description. And then there's description in all the other Puranas, Mahabharata, so many places where our current condition is described perfectly, even though these scriptures were written 5,000 years ago. We know what are the current conditions of the Kali Yuga. We know it is hellish. We, the people in this room, many other people who we know who are not present, and we do not accept. Rather, we choose as individuals to live as if I am a citizen, a denizen of the Satya Yuga. I will be a golden age individual, even in the midst of this darkness. And this way, indeed, we will be the lights of this world. We will be the models. We will be the anti-politicians. Just like the Srimad Bhagavatam was describing how with these corrupt politicians, what happens? The people follow them and they become corrupt. We are going to be the opposite of this. We are going to be indeed the lights of this world. We are going to be the models. We are going to be the leaders, such that when people see us, they have hope. they say to themselves, even unbeknownst to themselves, even not necessarily even understanding these concepts, still they will understand what I am seeing are individuals who are not of this age. They are not of this place. They are in this world, but they are not of this world. And in this way, with ourselves, living as citizens, as denizens of the Satya Yuga, the Golden Age, we will bring light to this dark age. And we will restore the Satya Yuga for 10,000 years, as Prabhupada has told us. There are very few individuals for whom this description fits, but there are some individuals in this world for whom their words are infallible. And when they say something, it is true. Prabhupada was one of them. And he told us we're going to experience a mini golden age that will last for 10,000 years. How will this golden age come about? Not magic, not wishing, not waiting. Rather, we bring it about. We bring it about in reciprocal relationship with the Supreme. That we as devotees of God, of Krishna, what do? Again, we perfect ourselves. We make ourselves worthy vessels of God's mercy and grace in this world. And then conversely, God indeed showers His grace upon the earth. And we will have a golden age. This is how we do this. All this being said, there is a force in this world today. There is a force in this world today that has been in hiding. It has been like taking the sun and trying to cover it with a basket. It's been under a basket. Now that basket is about to be removed. That force is called the International Sanatana Dharma Society. We are the spearhead. We are going to bring about this golden age. Along with others, we need many people. We need allies. We need every good-hearted person out there who understands the dire situation that we find ourselves in and what needs to be done. We need to cooperate with as many people as possible, but more importantly, they need to cooperate with us because we are indeed the spear, the tip of the spear. Let me tell people a little story that only a few people know. It's an interesting thing that happened to me. It's one of thousands of interesting mystical experiences that I've had, for lack of a better term. But this was around the year 2008 when I was the Acharya, the spiritual teacher of the Hindu temple here. I think a few people saw the Hindu temple when we drove from the airport. We drove by there. And at one point, I was doing a 30-day, I believe it was a juice fast. It wasn't a full fast. And some of the people in this very room actually were with me, including Mandaleshwari. Arjuna was there, where for 30 days I did this juice fast. Where every day I would sit, every evening, I think it was maybe around 7 or so, 7 p.m., I would sit in front of the murtis of Radha Krishna. And I would sit there, and similar to what we did a short time ago, except it would be silent. I would do meditation for an hour. And as I sat before Radha Krishna, behind me, there would be 3, 4, 10, a dozen. It would change from night to night, students of mine, and we would all meditate together. Well, on one of these occasions, as I was sitting there and steeped very deeply in silent meditation, feeling this cooling fire of Radha Krishna in front of me with my eyes closed, I had an amazing vision. It just came to me. And it literally was a vision, where I suddenly saw very, very, very deep space, very, very far away from here. And what I saw was a spear, but it was not an ordinary spear. It was massive. It was beautiful. It was bejeweled. And it was sharp. And it was powerful. And it was hurtling faster than we could even conceive toward the earth. And I realized at that time, I didn't fully understand what it meant. But one thing I did realize was that what this spear represented was quite literally Dharma itself hurtling toward earth, readying itself for impact. And I knew that at some point in the future, I didn't know exactly when, but I knew it was going to be more than 10 years. I knew that. I knew that eventually this spear of Dharma would reach here, and evil itself would be annihilated. That spear, and more, the tip of the spear, is indeed the ISDS, this movement that is unlike any other movement upon the face of the earth. And this movement that will bring about indeed the restoration of Dharma in this world. How are we going to bring about this restoration? Let me just mention a few things, few of which people I think know about. We've even discussed a few of these things. Let me just discuss several things. First of all, what I spoke about earlier today. The International Sanatana Dharma Society has several missions, one of which is indeed to restore the complete Vedic system. I'm not going to repeat my talk from earlier today, but this is something that no one else is doing. We are indeed going to restore the complete Vedic system. Another thing that we're going to do, that we are going to see as a result of our activities in the International Sanatana Dharma Society, is we are going to see our reconnection with the gods. At one time in the Dvapara Yuga, in the previous Yuga, so a little bit over 5,100 years ago, it's actually stated in the Vedic scriptures that it was possible for virtuous people to literally converse with the gods face to face. Not just anyone, a virtuous person, virtuous kings, virtuous brahmanas, etc. We know for a fact, again, looking at all of these ancient cultures and so-called myths, etc., from all throughout Europe, from all throughout Asia, from so many different places, that at one time our earth was alive with divine beings. Our earth was alive with personalities in nature. There were yakshas and yakshis, there were tree spirits, there were nature spirits, there were gods and goddesses all around us. But what has happened in the Kali Yuga? We've lost sight of this, and it's very difficult for our people to communicate with these divine beings anymore. What does that mean? This means that we are separated from our family. We have been separated from our spiritual family, from the gods and goddesses. This is one thing we're going to restore. We're going to do this via ritual, via yajna, among other ways. But we are going to once again reopen these portals such that we can commune with the gods and they can commune with us and give us their blessings. The International Sanatana Dharma Society is going to do this. We are restoring the full and true yoga system. Yoga has existed for a long time. The elements of yoga are there, but the full system, and I don't have time to go very deeply into this, I have in the past. The full yoga system has not been practiced since roughly 9th, 10th century. The full yoga system. And what I mean by that is the yoga system of the Upanishads. Many people don't know this, but the yoga system ultimately is traced back to the Upanishads. And what the ISDS is doing, and again, I'm giving, unfortunately, a very small nutshell version of this project that we are doing. We are restoring the original yoga system as found in the Upanishads. What is that? That is the Ashtanga system permeated with bhakti, such that you follow the yoga system as we teach it, as the ISDS teaches it. You indeed will have in your lifetime self-realization and God consciousness. We are restoring this. We are helping to salvage our sister paths. You know, you've seen recently in the last several months that I've done several interviews with people that are available on our YouTube channel, Dharma Nation. But also I've been doing this for quite some time now, where I have been engaging in discussions with leaders of sister paths, meaning Asatru, meaning Druidic Celtic spirituality, and all sorts of other sister paths that have been damaged, that have been ravaged by Abrahamism, and attempting to help these sister paths to become revived. Well, this is something that we are indeed going to see. With the help of Vedic spirituality, we are going to see pre-Christian European religion become a force again. And they are going to do this with our help. Dharmic governance. Dharmic governance is something that we have seen, truthfully, disappear off the face of the earth. Dharma, if it is not instantiated, leads to a hellish condition. You remember these 4 verses that I discussed, that I mentioned from the Srimad Bhagavatam, and how hellish things have become as a result of misgovernance, as a result of demonic governance. Well, what we are going to do in the future is, indeed, we are going to re-establish the instantiation of Dharma in government, in governance. What does that mean? We're going to, in the future, see presidents who are following Dharma. We're going to see prime ministers who are following Dharma throughout the length and breadth of the earth. Both surreptitiously, that is, quietly, they won't necessarily use the word Dharma, but more, I wish to see, and I know that I will see in my lifetime, a president of the United States using the word Dharma and saying we are governing in accordance with Dharma. So we are going to see this. We are going to accomplish this. Revisionist history, and I won't go too deeply into this. Hopefully people simply understand what I mean. Revisionist history, our history that has been warped by evil cultural Marxists in academia, is going to be eradicated, and our true history, the history of our people, the history of our earth, going back to the very beginning of time, is going to be revealed and celebrated again. The ISDS will do this. And not finally, but finally for this talk, this is the short list. This is the short list of civilizational change that we're going to bring about. So finally, for the sake of this talk, Varna and Ashrama are going to be restored, and truly restored. We are going to have Brahmanas again, true Brahmanas, individuals who know Brahman, who know God, and who has the light of God coursing through them. We're going to have spiritual teachers and leaders again. We're going to have Kshatriyas, we're going to have true Dharma warriors, individuals who are selfless and who wish to lead their people for one reason. Not to take from their people, not to steal from their people, but for one reason, out of love for their people. We will see true leaders arise again. We are going to reestablish Varna and Ashrama. How is the ISDS very practically doing this? Very simply, we're doing it. We are establishing the orders for these various Varnas. So one of many projects that the general public doesn't really know about is, for example, we have established an order of Brahmanas. It's called the Brahmana Sangha. So we indeed have an order of clerics, of individuals who are Vedic priests. I have initiated many people into the fold of Vedic priests, and I'm very happy to say not just men, but women too, actually. Women too. But we are recreating an order of true and pure and qualified and authentic Brahmanas, individuals who are guardians of Vedic culture. That's one thing that we have done. The other thing is we have an order of Kshatriyas known as the Dharma Vajra. What does Vajra mean? Anyway,
Thunderbolt.
The thunderbolt of Dharma is an order that we have established, and it is an order for Kshatriyas, for Dharma warriors, for individuals who fit exactly the description of what I have been saying. Individuals who wish to lead society in either a martial or political way, but not for their own sake, for the sake of the love of their people. So we have established these 2 orders, and this is only the beginning of what we will be establishing in the future. Dharma Yuddha. Dharma Yuddha. Vinashaya Dushkritam. Krishna explains in Bhagavad Gita that we are to defeat evil. What is evil? We see evil all around us today. Now, and not by accident, some of the most evil people on earth are being exposed. And again, not by accident. The Jeffrey Epsteins of the world, just the tip of the iceberg. What we are seeing is that evil people are indeed being exposed. and more, they're going to be defeated. These individuals who are truly evil personified, individuals who murder others, who kill others, who exploit societies, who steal billions and trillions of dollars from innocent, hardworking people, who are human traffickers, who are quite literally pedophiles, who torture children. These are the people who have been in the Kali Yuga thus far ruling over us, and especially in the last several centuries in this era known as modernity. These people have ruled over us. Vinashaya dushkritam. To end this, it's an interesting thing. Sir Francis Bacon, he was a very interesting person. He was someone who lived in the 1600s. He was English. I'm sure people have heard of him, Sir Francis Bacon. There was a lot that he did. I don't really want to talk about his biography at all. You can look him up. But he wrote one little book that was interesting. It was called The New Atlantis. And it was a work of fiction, The New Atlantis, but it was his attempt to take his Enlightenment ideals, not real Enlightenment, but Enlightenment era, meaning atheistic, meaning secular, etc., meaning so-called scientific, but science to the exclusion of God, etc., to take these ideas and apply them to this utopian idea that he had of the future. And many people speculate, most scholars speculate, that he was talking about America, because America was discovered, just a mere century and a half before him, before this book was written. And there were already British colonists in America. He had this idea of transforming America into what he called the New Atlantis. But his idea of the New Atlantis was actually something quite demonic. It's very sad that he decided to call it the New Atlantis. Well, we have a similar idea, except the converse. We have an idea for America, and that is to make America dharmic, to make America truly an example to the nations. And rather than a new Atlantis, our goal is indeed to transform America into a new Aryavarta, into a land of nobility. This is our goal, is that we want to make America into truly a positive example for the entire world. That's why we're here. That's why the International Sanatana Dharma Society, it does indeed work internationally, and we have members and supporters in many, many, many dozens of nations throughout the world, but our heart is here in America because we understand that with all of its problems, having been the belly of the beast for so long, having been a nation that's been used as a tool by these evil forces who have propelled the Kali Yuga thus far, we understand that we are going to take their weapon away from them and use it against them. We understand that there was a reason why Prabhupada came to America, why Prabhupada came here. He himself had hopes for this nation, as did, interestingly, many spiritual people. We are going to transform America into a truly Vedic society, into a Dharma, into a nation in which Dharma is instantiated. That's our goal. Thus, the very last project that I will mention, at least, of the International Sanatana Dharma Society, and I won't go into detail because tomorrow I'll be giving a talk about this, is what is called the Vedic Heartland Initiative. This is yet another project of the ISDS. Our goal is to start small and to indeed have a Vedic community, a fully functioning Vedic community in time here in Omaha, in the center of the nation, in the very heartland of the nation. We are going to indeed have a Vedic community here, first with a few people, then dozens of people, then hundreds of people, with the idea of establishing a fully functioning Vedic society in every way. And I won't go into great detail because tomorrow I will be going into great detail, but it's with the idea of starting at the very heartland of America, where people are earnest, where people are good, where people still have some traditional values, etc., and to then expand outward to all the coasts and to the northern border and past it. And to indeed bring nobility back to our continent and then to the world. And thus, for a little while, 10,000 years, not too little, we will stop the Kali Yuga for a short time, and we will indeed establish a golden age. So with that, I thank you very much. Namaste.
Namaste.
Namaste. Namaste.